You see the headlines everywhere, right? This idea of a youth mental health crisis. But is it just a lot of hype, or is something real and kind of worrying happening with our kids? Well, today we're going to dig into the evidence and try to get to the bottom of what's really behind the rise in adolescent anxiety.
So, just how big of a deal is this? Let's start with one single, kind of shocking number. A major study from the University of Cambridge found that by 2020, 1 out of every 6 young people in the UK could be diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder. I mean, that's a huge jump, and it tells us this isn't just noise, it's a real public health concern. So, what's going on here? Why are so many more young people struggling now than ever before? It's a genuine mystery. So let's play detective. We're going to follow the trail of evidence, piece by piece, and see if we can solve this puzzle together.
Okay, so our first clue actually takes us back a ways. It's really important to get this. This problem didn't just pop up overnight. We're looking at a steady trend that's been building for 4 decades.
Yeah, you heard that right. The Cambridge Review is super clear on this. This isn't just about COVID or, smartphones. We're talking about top-notch studies from all over the world, and they all point to the same thing, a steady, consistent climb. That tells us we've got to look for causes that go way deeper. If this has been happening for so long, we have to ask, what's really changed for a teenager over the past few decades? Our investigation is going to start at the very heart of their world, at home, with the family. But, the moment we start looking at family life, the picture gets complicated. The evidence isn't pointing to one simple, easy answer. Instead, we're seeing some pretty conflicting trends. So check this out, because it's a real mixed bag. On one side, we've seen a definite rise in mental health issues among parents, which we know can affect their kids. But on the other side, we've seen a really welcome drop in some kinds of child maltreatment. It's kind of like a classic good news, bad news situation. So what does all this tell us? Well, what the research is pointing to is that it's not really about the family structure. Things like divorce rates don't seem to be the main driver here. It's more about the emotional atmosphere in the home. It seems there's a pretty direct line between the mental health of parents and the well-being of their children. All right, let's move on to our next suspect. And honestly, this is a big one: school. And this is where things get really interesting, because we can connect societal trends, personal stories, and even hard biological data to see a very clear picture starting to emerge. Yeah, it doesn't really matter where you look. The research is pretty clear. School has just gotten more stressful. There's way more emphasis on testing, on grades, and this feeling that a super competitive job market is just around the corner. It's all dialed up the pressure on students. And look, this isn't just some abstract academic theory. Just listen to this from a high school senior named Sawyer. I have tennis practice and choir practice after school. I work on homework until 11 p.m. many nights. Wow, that just paints such a clear picture of the nonstop schedules so many kids are dealing with. All that pressure, it actually leaves a physical mark on the body, and we can measure it with a hormone called cortisol. You can think of cortisol as your body's built-in alarm system. It gets released when you feel like you're under threat. But what happens when that alarm bell is constantly ringing, triggered by things like school tests? Well, a really fascinating Harvard study found the answer. On days with big, high-stakes tests, students' cortisol levels shot up by an average of 15%. And this is such a key piece of the puzzle. It proves that this academic pressure isn't just in their heads, it's a real, physical, measurable event happening inside their bodies. Okay, next up, let's talk about lifestyle. And just like what we saw with family life, the evidence here is, well, it's kind of all over the place. We see some definite positives, but also some really worrying negatives. So here we go again with this story of two competing trends. The good news: teens are drinking and smoking less than previous generations. That's a huge win for public health. But at the exact same time, they're getting less and less sleep, with more and more of them not hitting that recommended 8 hours a night. And of course, we got to talk about the elephant in the room: screens. Now, yes, studies definitely show a connection between heavy social media use and depression. But, and this is a big but, researchers are quick to say we haven't proven cause and effect. Is it the constant social comparison on Instagram? Or are kids who are already feeling down just more likely to spend hours scrolling? It's super complicated, and honestly, the jury's still out on that one. Okay, now we need to look at a factor that doesn't just add to the problem, it seems to make all the other pressures we've talked about even worse. And that's economic hardship. So, remember that Harvard study on cortisol levels? Well, here's maybe the most powerful finding from it. The students who had the most extreme, the most unhealthy stress responses on test days, they were the students from the most disadvantaged neighborhoods. This is such a crucial insight, right? Stress at home and stress at school aren't two different things. They pile on top of each other.
And it's not just that one study. The Big Cambridge Review confirms this on a massive scale. The researchers point to rising family poverty and social inequality as key reasons for this 4-decade-long trend. It's this persistent, powerful force that sits underneath a lot of the other issues.
Okay, so we followed all these different threads through the home, through school, through society. So, what's the verdict? How does this all connect? Well, it's pretty clear there's no single bad guy in this story. It's more like a perfect storm. The evidence points to this powerful mix of things all hitting at once. The crazy pressure of modern school, more emotional strain on parents, the constant stress of poverty and inequality, and of course, just not getting enough sleep. And the really important thing to get here is that these aren't separate buckets. They all feed into each other. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. The research actually suggests that things could be even worse if it weren't for a few positive changes. Things like less substance use and less of that old school face-to-face bullying have probably acted as a kind of buffer, keeping things from getting even worse. So where does all this leave us? We've unraveled this really complex web of pressures that's been building for decades, and understanding it is the first step. The next, and this is the really important one, is to ask ourselves, as these pressures keep changing, how do we adapt? What's it going to take to build a world that actually supports a more resilient next generation?